A man can have power. He can have status. He can even have wealth stacked so high it could buy silence, luxury, and false admiration. But there's something deeper, more ancient, more quietly desperate, something most men crave more than money. And yet, most would never say it aloud. They want to be seen, not watched, not praised, not needed for their paycheck. Truly seen the way a boy once hoped his father might look at him with pride, or his mother with warmth instead of worry. Seen without performance, without proving, without earning. And yet, it's the one thing they've been told they're not supposed to need. So they chase. Promotions, six-packs, cold showers, leadership programs, perfect partners, even the illusion of being the rock everyone leans on. But the boy inside? He's starving. And the more this boy starves, the more the man suffers. Quietly, honorably, sometimes invisibly. You've seen it. Maybe you are him, or maybe you love him. And deep down, you know this too. Behind the bravado, behind the "I'm fine," there's an ache that can't be filled with accomplishments. Because the wound was never about failure. The wound was about not being felt. In this video, we're going to go somewhere most voices don't dare tread, not because it's taboo, but because it's real. We'll walk through what men truly long for beneath the surface, and why no amount of success can silence that hunger. You might feel something stir as you listen, something that's been waiting to be named, maybe for years. That's not weakness, that's truth rising. And truth doesn't ask permission. If this resonates with you even a little, I invite you to stay. Breathe. You don't need to agree. Just feel. And if something in this journey moves you, leave a comment, even just a word. It's not just an algorithm out here. It's people like you. People who feel deeply, even if they've never had a safe place to say so. And if you haven't already, you can subscribe, not for numbers, but so we don't lose each other in the noise. Let's begin. There was a boy once, quiet, observant. He didn't cry when he fell, not because it didn't hurt, but because someone told him long ago that boys who cry are weak, that silence is strength, that needing comfort makes you soft. So he swallowed the pain. He grew. He became the dependable one, the one who didn't complain, the one who always figured it out, who stayed calm when others collapsed. He was admired for it, rewarded even. But in private, in the stillness of his own company, he began to wonder why he felt so far from himself, so far from joy. He had done everything right, chased goals, built a name, learned discipline, gave love. But what he wanted, what he really wanted, still felt like it was out of reach. Carl Jung once said, "Man needs difficulties. They are necessary for health." But he didn't mean misery for the sake of misery. He meant that within our challenges lie the clues to our soul's return. Because the truth is, most men aren't suffering from laziness or lack of ambition. Most men are suffering from emptiness. They are bleeding in places no one sees, places they don't even have language for. They've been told to be strong, but never how to be whole. They've been told to protect, but never how to ask for protection. What they crave, more than applause or approval, is to feel safe enough to exhale, to lay down the sword, to be held not just physically, but emotionally, and not held because they're broken, held because they're human. But the world is loud with noise that says, "Man up, don't be needy, be a provider, she'll leave if you're too soft." So they go silent again. But silence isn't the absence of pain, it's the burial of it. And the longer it stays buried, the more it festers into outbursts, isolation, withdrawal, addiction, even numbness disguised as peace. You know the look. A man who smiles but his eyes don't. A man who nods but he's not with you. A man who shows up, but not all of him, because all of him never felt welcome. This isn't about blaming anyone. It's not about blaming women, fathers, mothers, society. It's about bringing air to what's suffocating inside. Because the thing that most men want, more than money, more than validation, is someone who says, "I see you. You don't have to earn this." That changes a man. That frees him. And when a man is free, when he's no longer fighting to be accepted, but knows he already is, he becomes something sacred. He becomes love, not performance, presence, not pressure. He becomes someone who stops trying to conquer the world and starts coming home to himself. And maybe, just maybe, that's the version of him you've been waiting to meet. It starts young, this shaping of a man. When a boy falls and hears, "You're okay," even when he's not, he learns to mistrust his own feelings. When he reaches out and no one reaches back, he learns that his needs are too much. When he cries and is met with shame, he doesn't stop hurting, he just hides it better. The boy disappears, but the pain doesn't. He becomes a teenager who jokes too loud, who flirts to feel something, who works out not just for strength, but for some kind of protection. He becomes a man who keeps everything together for everyone, and then sits alone in a dark room wondering why it feels like something inside is quietly dying. He's successful, but hollow, loved, but unknown. There's a moment in every man's life when he realizes the world doesn't need more of his perfection. It needs more of his truth. But that moment is terrifying, because truth means peeling back everything he's spent years building just to feel like he matters. So most don't. They keep pretending, and society claps for the mask. But deep down, what men truly want, the kind of want that aches at 2 a.m. is this: a place to fall apart without being abandoned, a love that isn't afraid of their shadows, a connection where their silence is still heard, not to be fixed, not to be tested, just to be met. That's what money can't buy, and no amount of ambition can replace it. You might think men are afraid of commitment, or vulnerability, or love. But the truth, many are just afraid of being seen and then rejected, not for what they did, but for who they are underneath it all. Because if you've never been loved in your darkest, it's easy to believe you don't deserve light. So they hide behind achievements. They chase success, thinking it will silence the boy inside who once begged, "Please choose me." They stay busy, numb, efficient, but at night, when it's quiet, the truth comes back like a whisper: "I'm still here, and I'm still hurting." Here's what no one tells you about healing as a man: it's not loud, it's not public, it's not a grand declaration. It's soft, it's sitting in your car longer than you need to. It's crying and not wiping it away. It's admitting to yourself, "I'm tired of performing." It's texting a friend and saying, "I don't have words, but I don't want to be alone tonight." It's slow, it's messy, it's sacred. And sometimes healing starts when someone finally looks at you past your resume, past your muscles, past your calm exterior, and says, "You don't have to carry it all. You were never meant to." There's a certain kind of silence that men learn to live with. Not the peaceful kind, not the silence of a quiet walk or an early morning coffee, but the kind that feels like a locked room inside the chest. No light, no air, just memory, shame, stories he's never told. Because who would he tell? He's the one others lean on. He's the protector, the fixer, the one who always has it together. But what they don't see is how many times he's patched himself up just to be enough for the people around him. How often he's said, "I'm good," when what he really meant was, "I'm breaking." They say men aren't emotional. That's not true. Men feel oceans, but they've been taught to build dams. So the pain doesn't spill out, it builds pressure. And eventually, it leaks out sideways through irritation, withdrawal, sarcasm, sudden distance, not because he doesn't care, but because he doesn't know how to say, "I'm scared. I feel small. I don't know who I am anymore." You ever notice how quiet some men get after giving everything to be enough? It's not defeat. It's grief. Grief over the years he tried to be what others needed, instead of what he truly was. Grief for the parts of himself he had to exile just to be loved. Grief for the boy who never got to be soft, to be protected, to be loved without condition. And here's what makes it worse. Many men don't even know they're grieving, because no one taught them that grief can come from survival, that you can mourn the self you lost while learning how to be acceptable. It's a slow kind of death, the kind you smile through, but there's a flicker inside him still, a whisper that says, "You don't have to keep doing this. There's more to you than this performance." And if he listens, really listens, he'll start to notice something strange, that the strength he was chasing was never in the pretending. It was always in the permission to feel, to ask for what he needs, to say, "I'm not okay," without fear of being made small, to rest, to receive, to be loved for being, not doing. Because men want this more than money, the sacred kind of love that doesn't flinch when they fall apart, the kind of love that holds their fear with tenderness, the kind of love that sees the warrior and the wounded child and doesn't turn away from either. That kind of love is rare, but it's real. And when a man finds it, everything changes, not because he's saved, but because he's finally seen. He remembers a time when love felt like a test, when being chosen meant being useful, when affection came after achievement, when connection was something he had to earn with good behavior, perfect timing, or silence. He learned not to interrupt, not to speak too much, not to take up space, especially when he was hurting. So he became what was expected: polite, controlled, strong, but deep down, a quiet resentment brewed not at anyone in particular, but at the fact that no one ever asked what he needed. It was always, "You're doing great. You're so solid. We can count on you." And yes, those words sound like praise, but when they're the only words a man hears, they become a cage. Because what happens when he's not solid? What happens when he needs someone to hold him? He doesn't know where to go or how to ask. So he doesn't, and that loneliness, it doesn't scream. It just seeps into how he touches, into how he listens, into how far he stays from his own heart. He loves, yes, deeply, but cautiously, because the last time he opened too wide, it cost him more than anyone knew. The truth is, most men were never taught how to receive love that doesn't come with conditions. So when they meet it, when someone offers softness without asking for anything in return, it disorients them. They brace for disappointment, for the other shoe, for the subtle pullback that says, "You've shown too much." But what if it stayed? What if someone looked into the places he hides and said, "I'm not going anywhere"? He wouldn't know what to do at first. He might joke, brush it off, pull back, not because he doesn't want it, but because he wants it too much, because it touches the parts of him that are still raw. And when love touches a wound, it stings before it heals. That's what people don't understand. Men aren't unreachable. They're just afraid that being reached will break them. But it won't. What breaks a man is the belief that no one ever will, that he's destined to stay unseen, that vulnerability is a luxury he doesn't deserve. That belief becomes his armor, and while armor protects, it also isolates. But when someone sees beyond the shield, when someone whispers, "You can take it off here," that man starts to breathe again, maybe for the first time in years, because what he wanted all along wasn't to be stronger, it was to be safe. Safety, for a man, rarely looks like a soft couch and a quiet room. It looks like being able to say, "I don't know," without being laughed at. It looks like falling silent in the middle of a conversation and not having to explain why. It looks like being angry, not aggressive, but honestly angry and still being loved. It looks like not being needed for anything, just wanted, not for what he can do, or solve, or give, but simply because he is. Most men have never tasted that kind of safety. Not really. And when they do, it's like drinking water after wandering in a desert they didn't know they were dying in. Because for so long they've mistaken endurance for peace. But endurance isn't peace. It's survival in disguise. And you can't build love on survival, not true love. Not the kind that holds a man when he's shaking, that meets his silence with presence, that hears what he's not saying and doesn't make him say it. He's not difficult. He's just tired. He's tired of always being the one who holds the weight, tired of pretending to be okay because no one knows what to do when he's not, tired of his softness being a liability, tired of his dreams being buried under obligations. And here's the quiet truth. When a man finds the courage to admit all this, even just to himself, he begins the real work. Not building, not fixing, not earning, but remembering. Remembering who he was before the world told him to be tough, before he decided that tears were weakness, before he confused sacrifice with love. And in that remembering, something ancient wakes up in him, not rage, not pride, but a kind of calm knowing that he's allowed to be more than a role, that his worth isn't tied to what he produces, that the deepest parts of him, the ones he thought he had to hide, are the ones the world is starving for. Because when a man begins to heal, he doesn't just heal himself, he heals everything he touches. He loves differently. He listens without defense. He apologizes without shame. He holds space without trying to fix. He becomes the kind of man who makes the people around him feel safe, not because he's perfect, but because he's real. And that's what men are truly hungry for. Not applause, not power, not even admiration, but the freedom to be fully, unapologetically human and still be loved. Sometimes he lies awake at night, staring at the ceiling, a quiet ache blooming in his chest. It's not about the bills, or the emails, or the meetings he has tomorrow. It's something deeper, something older, a feeling that there's a part of him still waiting to be chosen. Not by the world, not even by someone else, but by himself. He's accomplished things, pushed through storms, proved people wrong, been the hero in 1,000 silent battles, and yet there it is again. That ache, that question, is this all there is? He's not ungrateful. He knows others would kill for what he has. But what people don't understand is that emptiness doesn't always come from lack. Sometimes it comes from too much pretending, too many years of suppressing, too many moments of being there for everyone, except himself. Because somewhere along the way, he learned that to be loved, he had to disappear a little, or a lot. So he became useful, stable, predictable, and people liked that version of him. But no one ever asked what it cost. It cost him softness. It cost him spontaneity. It cost him the ability to show up raw, trembling, unsure without it threatening his worth. It cost him himself, and that's the great tragedy, that men trade authenticity for acceptance, that they abandon their deepest truths to be safe, that they forget their own inner voice because it stopped being welcomed so long ago. But here's the quiet miracle. The moment he chooses to turn back to his own soul, to the boy who still lives in his chest, to the parts of him that don't make sense to anyone else, something begins to shift. It's not dramatic, not a movie moment. It's subtle, sacred, almost invisible. It looks like breathing deeper, speaking slower, holding his own gaze in the mirror, not with shame, but curiosity. It looks like finally asking, "What do I need?" and staying long enough to hear the answer. And maybe, just maybe, it looks like letting someone close enough to see it all. Not just the good, not just the strong, but the afraid, the unsure, the undone. Because the man who has everything on the outside, but nothing left within, he's not broken. He's just been waiting for someone to remind him that love doesn't require perfection, that vulnerability isn't a threat, that he can let the armor down and still be worthy. There's a moment it doesn't come with fireworks or applause when he lets someone see the part of him he's hidden for years. Maybe it slips out as a trembling sentence, "I don't think I know how to be loved." Maybe it's just a breath, a long-held inhale finally released in the presence of someone who doesn't flinch. And that moment, that's everything. Because most men don't fear love. They fear that once love sees what's underneath, it will leave. But when it doesn't, when someone stays, when no one turns away at the sight of the wounds, the shame, the confusion, something opens inside him that hasn't opened since he was a child. Not his mind, his heart, not to perform, not to impress, but to simply be with. To sit in a room, unguarded, and feel the miracle of being known not for his talents, his body, his money, or his usefulness, but for his soul. That's what men want more than money, more than sex, more than success. They want this, to not have to explain themselves, to not be punished for softness, to not be measured by how well they can suppress pain. They want to sit across from someone, a friend, a lover, even a stranger, and not wonder if showing their truth will cost them everything. They want to be allowed to need, to grieve, to not have it together, and maybe to rest, because they've been tired for so long. But this world doesn't teach men how to rest. It teaches them to endure, to push, to hustle, to win, even when the prize is emptiness, even when the applause dies down and the silence returns, and they're alone with a life that looks good but feels hollow. So they keep going, and no one stops them, because no one sees it. But you do. Maybe you're the man listening right now, or maybe you love him. And you felt it too, that moment when the mask slips just a little, and you see the boy who never got to just be, who never felt safe in his own skin. What he needs isn't a solution. He needs space. He needs passions. He needs presence. He needs love that doesn't punish him for being human. And if he's lucky, if you're lucky, that kind of love will find him. Not to save him, not to change him, but to remind him that he was never too much, and never not enough. He was always just waiting for the right moment to come home to himself. There's a particular silence that follows the realization he's never really known how to be loved without a performance. Every time someone said, "I'm proud of you," it was after he produced something, after he showed up, after he made things easier for everyone else. But what about the days he didn't show up? The days he didn't have answers? The days he was fragile, unsure, afraid to get out of bed? Who met him then? He remembers. He remembers who disappeared, who got uncomfortable, who changed the subject, who walked away. And he remembers the shame, the internal story that grew louder with every abandoned moment. If I'm not strong, I'm not lovable. If I'm not useful, I'm a burden. If I'm honest, I'll be alone. So he adapted. He became the kind of man people admired, and the kind of man who never truly let anyone in. He made himself needed, so he'd never be left. He made himself wanted, so he wouldn't feel replaceable. But being wanted isn't the same as being loved. Being wanted is conditional. Love, real love, is quiet and brave and terrifying, because it asks for the one thing he's never truly trusted, his own rawness. And yet, it's the rawness that brings him home. He doesn't need a savior. He doesn't need perfection. He doesn't even need someone to always understand. What he needs, what every man needs, is space. To speak and not be corrected. To feel and not be rushed. To fall apart and still be held. He's not asking for permission. He's asking for presence. And when he receives it, something ancient begins to unravel. Not all at once. Healing doesn't come in one clean wave. It comes in fragments. In the way he no longer apologizes when he cries. In the way he says, "I need help," without choking on the words. In the way he no longer tenses when someone touches his shoulder. It comes in the mornings where he breathes slower. The nights where he doesn't feel like he's failing because he's feeling. The days when he realizes he doesn't have to earn every ounce of love. Because love is not something he buys with his silence. It's something he receives when he finally allows himself to be seen. And when a man is truly seen, he no longer chases freedom. He becomes it. When he becomes freedom, it's not loud. It's not the roar of breaking chains or the crash of walls coming down. It's quiet. It's in how he walks, not rushed, not chased, not performing for the invisible eyes of expectation. It's in how he listens, no longer planning what to say next, but actually being there, fully, present. It's in how he no longer flinches when someone says, "I love you," because now he believes it's possible. He may not know how to fully receive it yet, but he doesn't push it away. That's how healing begins. A man who used to only know survival now begins to taste aliveness. And no, it's not perfect. Some days he still wakes up afraid, still hears the old voice that says, "Don't be weak, don't be needy." But now he knows that voice isn't truth. It's memory. It's conditioning. And he doesn't have to obey it anymore. He's no longer fighting to prove his worth. He's no longer holding his breath in the hopes that someone sees him. He's no longer trying to shrink his pain so others feel comfortable. Because he knows now, the world never needed his perfection. It needed his truth. He was always allowed to be tired, to be human, to be real. And that's what makes him powerful now. Not the mask, not the muscles, not the wealth or the image. His power is in his ability to stay open even after all the reasons he had to close. That kind of man changes the room just by walking into it. He doesn't need to be the loudest. He doesn't need to dominate. He just is. Safe, soft, grounded, honest. And others feel it, not because he's figured it all out, but because he's no longer pretending that he has to. He no longer fears being loved when he's messy. He no longer trades his heart for approval. He no longer believes that needing love makes him weak, because he's seen it now. Love doesn't weaken a man. It roots him. And when a man is rooted not in image, but in truth, the world around him shifts. His relationships shift. His silence becomes sacred, not heavy. His presence becomes medicine, not mystery. His love becomes deep, not demanding. And maybe, for the first time in his life, he feels like he can finally rest. Not because the world is fixed, but because he is no longer abandoning himself. That's what he wanted all along. More than money, more than power. He wanted himself back.